We usually think of the creation story as, well, the beginning. But what if there's a prologue, a story before the story, tucked away in ancient scriptures? And what if that prologue isn't just about stars and planets, but it's actually all about you?
All right, so let's just jump right in with a question that's going to shape everything we talk about today. What if that huge, epic story of creation was actually written about you? I know, it sounds like a big claim, but stick with me, because ancient texts from Moses and Abraham really seem to back this up.
See, the books of Moses and Abraham, they're like the director's cut. They give us the why behind it all. It's not just about what was created, but, and this is the key, who it was all created for. This is that missing prologue, and it changes everything.
And where does this prologue begin? Well, it starts with the most fundamental thing there is, your identity. Think about it. Moses had to figure out who he was before he could even begin to grasp God's creations. And guess what? It's the exact same for us.
And here it is, just 4 simple words spoken from God to Moses, but man, they are the anchor for all of us. Before you're anything else, before any job title or social status, this is the bedrock truth of who you are. You are a child of God. That message was meant to ground Moses, and it's absolutely meant to ground you too.
And what's so cool is that this ancient truth is still being taught today. President Russell M. Nelson has really clarified this, saying our most important identifiers boil down to these 3 things. Think about all the other labels we have, our jobs, our hobbies. Those things are temporary. They'll eventually fade, but these 3, they're rooted in our divine connection. They're eternal. Elder Iyer takes this idea even deeper. It's not just that we're God's children, it's that we're His joy. Like our growth, our success, that's the main event for Him. That's His focus. Just let that sink in for a second. Your journey brings joy to God. But of course, what happens right after Moses gets this incredible, life-changing revelation? Conflict. An adversary shows up and he's got a counterfeit identity to sell, a cheaper, lesser version of who Moses really is. And you know what? That's a pattern that plays out for every single one of us.
Just look at the difference here. It's so stark. Son of God versus Son of Man. One is all about our divine potential, our heavenly family. The other, it just tries to shrink us down, to limit us to being just, human. But Moses, because he had just felt God's glory, he could spot the fake a mile away. He knew the difference between real light and, just a dim imitation.
So, the big question is, how do we do what Moses did? Well, Elder Renlund gives us the answer. He says our power comes from identifying with Jesus Christ. When we really anchor ourselves to Him, we tap into this heavenly power, a power that helps us see through all the counterfeits and face our own challenges. It's basically our spiritual defense system.
Okay, so we've talked about our divine identity. Now let's switch gears a bit and talk about our purpose. Why all this? The galaxies, the stars, these worlds without number. What's the point of this gigantic, sprawling universe anyway? I think that's a question we've all asked ourselves, right? You look up at the night sky and, wow, it's so easy to feel tiny, completely insignificant in the face of all that. But the scriptures give an answer that is, it's incredibly personal.
And here's the verse that just changes everything. This is like the mission statement for the entire universe. All those worlds, all that creative power, all of it is organized for one single, personal reason, you. For your progression, your immortality, your eternal life. That, right there, is God's work and His glory.
And leaders today really drive this point home. This isn't some generic goal for humanity as a whole. No, this grand work is intensely personal. The being who created the entire universe knows you by name. He is personally invested in your journey. He's not just a bystander, He's actively cheering you on.
So, where did all of this actually start? Well, guess what? Our story doesn't begin at birth. The book of Abraham pulls back the curtain and shows us that we were active players in this whole divine plan right from the get-go, in a life we lived before we ever came here. Can you just imagine it? A massive council in heaven, and we were there as spirits. We knew God, we lived with Him. And in that council, a plan was laid out, a path for us to progress, to get a body, to have experiences that would help us ultimately become more like Him.
So let's just break it down real quick. Step 1, we existed as spirits and we were among the noble and great ones. Step 2, a plan was put on the table for our growth.
Step 3, we had to choose, and we chose to follow Jesus Christ and his plan. And that brings us to step 4. This life was created as the next phase, our time to be tested and proven. The very fact that you're here, right now, is proof of the incredible choice you already made.
So let's wrap up with a question for you to really think about. Knowing all this, that you are a child of God, that this entire universe was literally designed with you in mind, and that God's own glory is tied to your success, how might that change things? How might that change the way you look at your struggles, your mistakes, and yeah, even your potential? The prologue is written. You're the main character. And now the rest of the story? Well, that's up to you.